Okay, I think we could get started. There's people joining us. So I'd like to welcome everyone today to this France Ireland Chamber of Commerce event. And I know we have at least around 90 people who have registered showing the interest in this story today, stories of resilience on and off the water. And with our special guest, Tom Dolan, who's a top professional sailor, and we'll hear all about him in a few minutes. Before we move on, just to let you know that you've got a chat button at the bottom of the screen, and you're very welcome to put in any questions you may have for Tom, and we'll do our best to answer all these questions at the end of the chat between Jerry and Tom. So just before we move on to introducing Tom, I'd like to first of all welcome Jerry Jones, who's the moderator today. Welcome. Bienvenue, Jerry. Merci beaucoup. And Jerry is actually a member of the France Ireland Chamber of Commerce. Jerry, I believe you've been a member since I've been the director with the Chamber, which is several years now. He's a company director and chairman and serves on the boards of a number of companies in the technology, e-commerce, sailing and the mail order sectors. And Jerry has served as chairperson of the Irish Software Association and was a member of the Governing Council of ICT, the Advisory Council of Science, Technology and Innovation, and the Enterprise Ireland Committee on Research, Technology and Innovation. Now, I know that Jerry has a keen interest in environmental matters, particularly protecting the oceans from plastic pollution. And he is a keen sailor, hence the connection with Tom, and worked earlier in his career for Glennon's at their bases in France. So Jerry, over to you, please.
Thank you, Cliona, and welcome to everybody. I think we have people from Dublin, France, and further afield as well, so all very welcome. It's my great pleasure to introduce Tom Dolan. Tom hails from a farming background in County Meath. And Tom started off his career studying agricultural science in UCD. He quickly realized that farming wasn't his passion and changed direction, eventually becoming a chef de base in the very famous Le Glennon organization in Ireland, and also then moving to their bases in France, where he was a base manager. Tom is based in France, where he works as a professional high-performance solo sailor and competes in the solo multi-stage sailing race known as the Solitaire de Figaro. The Solitaire de Figaro race lasts over just 3 weeks and is made up of 4 races totaling 1,800 miles. It's considered the world's toughest sailing race. Tom has been sponsored by Smurfit Kappa Group since 2018 and works closely with Smurfit Kappa in Ireland and France as part of their Better Planet Packaging initiative. His extraordinary rise to 5th place in the 2020 Solitaire de Figaro from 32nd place in 2019 is unprecedented. His 5th place was the best result since 1997 by a non-French sailor. This was Tom's 3rd time competing in the Solitaire de Figaro, and after 1,800 miles, 10 days racing, he finished 4 places behind Armand Lecléache, winner of the 2016-2017 Vendée Globe, with a time difference of 1 hour, 29 minutes and 48 seconds. Tom also received 6th place in the 2020 French Sailing Federation Elite Offshore Sailing Rankings. In February 2021, Tom's extraordinary success was recognised in Ireland, where he was named the 2020 Sailor of the Year by Irish Sailing and Afloat magazine. Tom has been nicknamed the Irlandais Volant, the Flying Irishman, by the French press, and has been called the People's Sailor by Winky Nixon of Ireland's Afloat magazine. Tom has recently announced his campaign to qualify for the Paris Olympics in 2024 in the double-handed sailing class. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Tom Dolan. Tom, quite a series of accolades there, and even on just reading it through there in the last few moments, how does a farmer from County Meath become a top professional sailor? It's not exactly, County Meath isn't known for its maritime tradition or heritage. So tell me, how did you do it?
Not yet, Jar, not yet. It's a bit of a bit. Thanks a million for the introduction. Nothing expecting that. Thanks. I reckoned you might ask me that, and it does seem a bit like two opposite worlds of offshore sailing and farming. But I was thinking about it last night, and in a way, there's maybe you're missing 2 very important things: is the boat and the sea. But in a lot of ways, it's kind of a lot of it, of how I managed to do what I do, is thanks to the fact that I grew up on a farm, and the things that are in common is that I suppose maybe you're very dependent on the weather in many ways.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hard work and a lot of resilience, I suppose you could say, needed in the two areas. If you're out in the middle of the sea and something breaks, you can't exactly turn around and say, all right, I've had enough, I'd like to get off now. And if you come back from school or come back in the evening and then herd of sheep are after getting out and running off, you can't exactly say, here, look, I'll go and get them tomorrow. So in a way, very different. Missing, of course, a boat and the sea and everything, but in a way, I am very proud and very glad that I did grow up on a farm, especially in County Meath. So sorry, I'm going on a bit. To answer your question, my father had lived in England for a good part of his life, and before coming back to take over the family farm, a buddy of his had taken him out sailing in the Solent, which is a very famous sailing part of the world, especially in the UK, which is just around Portsmouth where I live. And then I suppose he quickly realised when I was young, I had a bit of an obsession with pirate movies. You know, some people want to be cowboys, some want to be astronauts. I wanted to be a pirate. And so he started explaining to me a little bit about how the boats worked and where the pirate ships would come from the windward side and things like that. And I started building boats out of cardboard. And then one day, I suppose he got a notion. We drove up to County Roscommon and I bought a little wooden boat, a little dinghy, and brought it back. And we used to take it out on the lake because I lived right up the north, County Meath, just on the border of County Cavan. You know, Cavan is famous for all its lakes. So we used to take us out in the lake called Loch Rammer up in Virginia. And it wasn't the plan to become a professional sailor. It wasn't even imaginable that could be a plan, you know, growing up in Ireland, first of all, and especially in County Meath in Ireland, where first of all, I don't think there is any, well, at the time there wasn't any sailing clubs, and if there was, I didn't know anything about them. It just seemed like such a world away, so far away that you could never even imagine it being a job of any sort. So we used to sail around for maybe a couple of years out in Loch Rammer, and then one day coming back to the trailer hit a pothole. Cavan's was also known at the time for its potholes. So the trailer hit a hole, and then the trailer hit the boat, and there was a hole in the boat, and that was the end of that. And then I suppose I went into my teenage years, and then quickly didn't forget about it, but forgot about the idea, or hadn't even realised the idea of it being a job. And I used to, the only way I had any sort of access to sailing was the Volvo Ocean Race, which is a race around the world, a crude race around the world. It used to be on TNG and in Irish every Tuesday, I think it was. So I used to watch that. Was my little secret, but I couldn't. I know what to talk to it about because all my friends were obsessed with Gaelic football and didn't even know what sailing was. Sailing is, I suppose. A funny friend of mine who's a doctor as an engineer and once asked me, and the boat just moves along by the wind, does it? I had to explain to him it's the same as an airplane wind. But anyway, as you said, I went on, and this would have been right in the middle of the Celtic Tiger. I suppose everyone had access to almost anyone had access to college, university, to things, and I suppose I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my career guidance teacher said to me, "Look, your father's a farmer. Why don't you go and do agricultural science?" Yeah. UCD. So I was only young. I was only gone 17. I said, "Yeah, why not? Yeah, I suppose why not? Go to UCD. Sounds cool." So I did, and I very quickly realised. I suppose I should have, long before that, growing up on a farm. I realised that I did not want to be a farmer. So I dropped out and was on the dole. Really didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine talked to me about Coláiste na Dúlaigh in Coolock, which is a PLC course where I only felt she wanted to go. She wanted to do photography, I think it was, and I was looking at the website and I had a look, and she said, "Will you commit me to the open day because I don't want to go on my own?" So I said, "Yeah, right." And then I saw all these kayaks and sailing boats and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, geez, what's that?" And I realized it was a course where you could go and become an outdoor sports instructor. It was like a sports instructor and manage a course. So that was the first time I actually realized it was a job in a way. Unless, of course, you lived very far away. So I went along. I did that, charmed my way into the course, and did that for 3 years. And as part of it, you had to do a work experience. So they said, "Here, look, you seem to like sailing." Luckily, I suppose I was in one way I was lucky. I'd done it young, so I still had the sensations and the repair. And I went, they said there's a place called Glenann's Irish Sailing School in Baltimore, and if you go, they won't pay you, but in exchange for your work, they'll teach you about sailing and sailing bigger boats. And now I was really starting to think, Jesus, I could go and work on a yacht somewhere, just be paid to sail, it was only real job. Yeah. So I went along, and the thing with Glenann's was it was a French organization, so I met all these French people and loved it, and then they offered me a job, and I stayed on. And in they had all these magazines, with pictures of boats that looked like the ones that I'd seen in the Volvo. And then there was this thing, I remember seeing one, this fella on his own in a boat under a spinnaker, like with loads of sail up, going real fast. And I googled it, and they were like, "Wow, what's that?" They said it's a thing called the Solitaire du Figaro. It's a race that you go and you're on your own. And I don't know, for some reason it clicked, the idea of being on your own, probably because I'll probably talk about it a bit later, because I was always a bit shy whenever I go on a boat, or I'd rock up on a pontoon and go with someone. I suppose I didn't really feel as in my place. And the idea, if you do it on your own, you're your own boss. If you do something wrong, it's your fault. If you do something right, it's your fault. Yeah. So make a long story short, I worked for Glenann's. They offered me a job in France. I was young and really starting to bite the bug, and thought, geez, that's if I ever want to do any sort of racing, which was starting to become a dream, a real dream. I said, I better go there, and then I did, and I met a guy on the internet who lent me his boat and raced across the Atlantic with it in 2015. I suppose the rest is history. Yeah.
Incredible story. And in terms, actually, like it sounds like this wasn't a plan. It just seemed to evolve over a period of time. Like, because you went down farming, then you went into sailing management, sail training, but now you've gone to professional offshore sailing, which is obviously kind of a quite different domain altogether, which the French dominate as well in. But back to the resilience topic, which is the topic today, and just to maybe define what resilience is. And again, I think Kay Kirby, who's the sports psychologist for Annalise Murphy, and also for yourself, Tom, as well, defined resilience as the ability to bounce back from adversity. And all of us in our lives, personal lives, professional lives, athletics like yourself, we've all at times hit some sort of adversity. You must have had quite a few setbacks during your career, in terms of in races, whatever else as well. You're on your own, you've done something, it's wrong, and it's a setback. How do you handle those? So what was the worst setback you ever had? And how do you handle that situation?
There's been quite a lot of setbacks. I suppose I've had a couple. First of all, is the setbacks on land, the setbacks during races, and then there's been setbacks where I've actually, geez, I might could end up dying here. But I think Did you ever have that situation of a life and death, like a life and death experience when you're racing? I did, yeah, during the Mini Transat, which was the same race I talked about going across the Atlantic. I did it twice. I did it in 2015 on a boat that, as I said, had been lent to me. That was a bit old, and I kind of bodged it together with, fixed it up and did it. And then I went back and decided to do it to try and win it in 2017 with a boat that I had bought with the inheritance from my father. I think he wouldn't mind. Yeah. And what I got, it was in the middle of the Atlantic, probably a bit closer to the end of the race, probably about 3 or 4 days from the Caribbean where I went to. And the problem when you go across the Atlantic is like that, it looks nice in the pictures, but the further west you get, the more unstable the air is, so the more violent the clouds are. They call them white squalls, so like big, huge squall clouds that come out of nowhere. Yeah. And of course, they're the most active at about 4 or 5 in the morning when you're the most unreactive, I suppose you could say. And there was no moon. That was the other thing. There was no moon, so you couldn't really see them. You look back and you'd see there was a couple of stars missing, So I woke up one night and there was really a lot of stars missing, and I kind of said, that one looks a little bit dodgy. So I dropped sail a little bit, way less than I should have. So I still had the spinnaker up, which is the sail, the kind of colory looking ones you've seen in the pictures that make us go fast. And the wind strength more or less doubled. So I got hit by this thing, and the boat catapulted, we call it. And the nose dive like that. So it went, like if this is the front, it went like that, up, the mast hit the water and fell. And you're on the boat still? Yeah, I was driving, yeah. It was the same experience as being in a car crash, really, I suppose. So I kind of got thrown forward, hopped, put my hands up like that to say stop myself, hopped off the roof of the boat and fell, tumbled into the water, leeward to the under at the bottom of the boat, which the mast was underwater, and there was like a Smurfit Kappa logo floating around under the thing. And if I hadn't been tied on, I probably would have ended up in the water, which is of course the biggest fear for sailors, for us sailors. So I really, yeah, that was probably the most scary thing that ever happened to me, I think. And then of course the boat started filling with water because the door into it was underwater, so kind of like in the Titanic. So that was probably.
How did it end? How did it end?
How did I know? The boat got back up. I kind of sat there and thought about things for a minute. And reckoned, Jesus, what time? 4 or 5 in the morning. And Dublin people are probably. It was a Saturday as well. So just people are probably stumbling out of bars and stuff. And here I am sitting on a boat on its side in the middle of the Atlantic all on my own. And it ended all right. It took me a while to get back over it, but what I learned from that is that you really need, because when I got back and I debriefed it, this was at a stage when I hadn't really started thinking about sports psychology and dealing with setbacks and things like that. What you really need to do is when something like that happens is first of all just sit and do what you call like a body check, just kind of think first of all make sure you're not injured, and then to just kind of see, okay, how am I? Am I stiff? Have I a sore back? And then the important thing is to go back to the basics. So like our body doesn't need stress, it doesn't need deadlines, it doesn't need to be thrown forward. What it does need is air and water and a bit of food. So just sit and breathe. A couple of breathing exercises, drink water, and just do a body check, and then have a couple stretch a little bit. And that usually doesn't come to you when you're just after nearly dying, or when you're just after having a really, really bad thing happen to you from a performance side of view, where you think, the race is over. So what you need to do is have a little, what I call them idiot lists, just like a little written pencil on the boat with a little thing. Is okay, breathe, water, stretch, sleep if you have to. Like there's a fella I race with, whenever he's stressed he goes to sleep. It's a handy good thing to be able to do, and just have a little list of what body check, a little thing of what do I do, and then after that to go back to your priorities, I suppose.
So really, actually, just on that race there, I think at the time, Tom, you were lying about 4th place in that race.
I was 3rd, yeah. No, I was actually 3rd, yeah. That's how I lost it.
3rd, and you actually, first of all, when a boat capsized like that, the mast usually always breaks. Yeah. So the luck of the Irish seemed to prevail. The mast didn't break, and you finished that race, I think, in 7th place. Is that correct?
6th after it, yeah.
So that's after kind of a transatlantic, 21 days at sea, to have that type of thing, setback, and recover and have that performance. It's incredible. The very interesting question here from Jack Roy, and I'll just read it out to you because it's just on this topic here. Psychology is a key aspect, obviously, when solo sailing. Have you worked on this element? Yeah,
I have a lot. It's probably one bad. It took me a while actually to get into it. Probably hugely thanks to you that I actually did get into it. But for a long time, that's probably a problem with growing up in a farm in the country, is that you don't really have the right to complain, or to accept that you might be weak, or you might struggle when you have setbacks. So it has, for the last couple of years, is something I've been really, really, really working on. And what I figured out, or what the person I was working with helped me figure out, was that I was suffering from a thing called suffering. Obviously, exactly suffering, but I had this thing called imposter syndrome, which is what a lot of people have, in that moment when you think, what am I doing here? Who do I think I am? I shouldn't be here. You know what I mean? So I have it like at the start of races, we'd always have a skipper presentation where they go around and they introduce all the skippers, and I'd be there kind of, right at the start, kind of, I didn't have a lot of money and a bit, scruffy looking, you could say, and I'd have these guys standing beside me with like the brand new sunglasses that they've been given to them by their sponsor, and they'd be talking, they'd be like, yeah, I was world champion when I was 4, and then 3 or 4 times world champion in the Optimus, and then I went up and I was going to do the Olympics, but then I decided, nah, I prefer offshore, and during family holidays to the Sillies, we do this and that, and I didn't realize, well, I did realize, I was thinking like, what, I'm never going to be able to beat someone like that, what am I doing here? I'm just, when I was if he'd seen the boat that me and my father sailed on back in the day, he'd probably ring the Coast Guard,
Yeah.
So, and then the big turning point was when the person I was working with said to me, here, look, and she just said, like, look at this example of this guy. There wasn't one fella in particular, it's just that there was a lot of them, especially in France. Said to me, like, who is it easier for? Was it easier for you or easier for them? And I was like, yeah, that's probably true. And then they said, look, yeah, but he can he can do it. Who worked harder and who, you know, who deserved it? No one deserves it more, I don't think. But who? When it was that phrase, it was just like, it was. To be honest, you've done a lot more work than they have. So why are you an imposter? Who's the imposter kind of thing?
And there's a very interesting point there, Tom, because in 2019 you finished 32nd place out of about 40 boats, so it wasn't a particularly good result, and I know you were disappointed by it. Okay. And then in 2020 you went from 32nd place to 5th place.
Yeah.
And this is your 3rd season when most of the guys in the top 20 boats had done at least 10 seasons each. And French sailing can't get their head around this. How the hell did this guy go from 32nd place to 5th place in one season? How'd you do it? What was the magic that made that happen?
But it was, first of all, that work that I did on the because of this imposter syndrome or thing we were talking about, that once things would start going wrong at sea, from a, I don't mean danger or boat wise, I mean from a performance side,
Yep.
I find myself a little bit back. All of this kind of lack of self-confidence, I suppose, that would come out of that would come from the fact that I didn't feel like I belonged there, would start coming on the top of me, and I'd start saying, oh, I'm useless, I shouldn't be here, what am I doing, and everything would fall apart.
Yeah.
What I did was I worked a lot on that.
Yeah.
And I started just keeping what we say is a stability, I suppose. Morale stable is what we call it. You know, you keep your morale and your mindset, and everything just has to be completely stable. Because the silly thing about offshore sailing is it's a bit like tennis. You know, you lose a lot and you win a lot in a very short period of time. You know, in one wind shift or one little placement that you can have, you can go from being first to 25th in a lot of time, and then a couple hours later you can go from 25th back to first. So it's always jumping and up and down. So you really need to be able to keep a stability in your morale and in your mindset and in how you do things, and to sail the same way or to compete the same way when you're first and when you're last.
Yeah, and just on that point there, Tom, I mean, like you kind of talked about, you know, the imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough, and we've all, I'm sure, had those kind of what I call inner conversations. You know, I'm not good enough. He's better than me. You know, etc., etc., etc. And it's a thought, and a thought can be changed.
Yeah, exactly.
From I'm not good enough to I am good enough. I am well prepared. I have trained well, and that kind of. Do you have any techniques or ways in which you can change the inner conversation from I'm not good enough to I am good enough? Any thoughts or techniques you use to do that?
The same as I said, a little list of what I call the pile. You know, you always have a.
Yeah.
The thought doesn't matter actually. The important thing is the race. So we have, like, what I'd have is, right, things are going wrong, or from a performance side of things, what are the priorities? And I just have a little list. I've lists written all over the boat, but you'd have a little list of priorities where, for example, in sailing, it's the synoptic wind, the tide, your competitors, the land, whatever way the race course is set up. So you kind of switch out of things are going wrong, I'm useless mode, and you just go back and say, right, simply, what do I put at the top of the pile?
Yeah.
It's not me breaking up or me being useless. It's right, okay. First of all, if it's really going bad, you start by drinking water, stretching, having a sleep even, and then back to okay, what's important now, the wind, the tide, whatever. Stop looking at your competitors and thinking, right.
And it's interesting, actually, again, back to Kate Kirby, Dr. Kate Kirby, who's the sports psychologist. She made a point about the secret to resilience is learn, don't crumble.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes we as human beings, sometimes we can, in that inner conversation, over-egg it and catastrophize it.
Yeah.
But in fact, if you're more balanced about it and have your list of things to do and go through a systematic approach to it, you can overcome those things as well.
And anticipate it as well. We could write it like when we prepare a race, we'd have what we call a road book, so which is basically the weather. You know, we're not talking about weather today, but you'd have strategy plan and a road book plan, and you note times when it's going to be difficult. You could say, like, right here, first of all, you might note, make sure you're rested because there it's going to be hard, and then you'd say, if you're behind, you're going to end up very far behind. But it's anticipated. You could say, like, this is a very difficult part of it, so you'd know, right, okay, this is going to be hard, and be ready for it, you know.
And it's interesting, in kind of sports psychology, we have this kind of the controllables and the uncontrollables. You know, so there's certain things we can control, like our preparation, the boat maintenance, the sales, the plan as well. But it's interesting you touched on that point of pre-race planning. I mean, the best offshore sailors, there's a say go in the fleet, the best guys win before the race starts, because they have done this preparation, which you've alluded to there as well. the weather forecasting, the strategy, the tactics, the game plan. So there's nothing left to chance here. And again, having seen you work before races, you put a huge amount of effort into that preparation for the race as well. Is that kind of something that you think is like, is that the way you work all the time in these situations?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a very common mistake in what we do at the start is you get so obsessed by the boat and having the boat ready, you completely forget to have yourself ready. So
Yeah,
as the weather and things, and then just being in good physical form. So make sure you're hydrated, you're ready, and you're rested more than because you do have all these things to manage.
And again, your team, I mean, it was interesting about solo sailing. Solo sailing, there's a big team behind solo sailing in terms of actually making the skipper do. I mean, you've got a weather forecaster, you have a sports psychologist, you have a coach. I think I'm allowed to say this today, Tom, that your coach at the moment is Bertrand Pass, who is French, obviously, former helm for the French America's Cup Challenge. And I think he's coaching you now on a helming and tactical strategy. How's that going?
I know, going great. Yeah, it's going great. As you said, we could even say solo sailing is hard, but you can't do it on your own. You can't solo sail on your own, you can almost say. But it's going great. Yeah, we're back at training flat out with and a very well known coach.
Yeah, a really interesting question here from Gail McAllister from Irish Sailing. Do you have a mantra? Well, you have to answer the question honestly because I know the answers. But do you have a mantra, song or movement you use to keep your determination and belief in your ability? So, song or movement?
No, I've cringy phrases written on the boat.
Really?
Well, it's weird, but I pick them off other people. No, there's a couple of cringy ones. I don't know how they say them.
What about Tommy Tiernan?
Oh yeah, I do. I like to listen to a bit of Tommy Tiernan sometimes when the wind is nice and stable and you've not a whole lot to do, just drive. I like to listen.
And again, sometimes in sports psychology, you can use music. There's certain music, we all have a favorite song, an uplifting song that kind of gives a feel-good factor. And again, from switching that conversation from I'm not good enough to I'm good enough, do you ever use music to kind of change your mood, your mindset, and that inner conversation?
No, to be honest, music I wouldn't. It's so I'm not. No, not. I'd sing maybe to myself a little bit, but no, I wouldn't listen to. I wouldn't be a big music listener. Actually, no.
Okay.
Probably if too much with that, it's completely a sailing thing. With too much noise in your ears, you miss the wind and you miss things. And you miss the light. So, no.
Okay. I have another question here coming in. I keep questions coming, by the way, as well from Anne Kerr. If you're not doing well in a race, do you ever feel like just settling in for a mid-fleet place? Or do you always try to improve on your position? What keeps you motivated to keep striving for a better place in the race? When you have a setback in a race, how do you have a set formula to deal with it? There's a few questions for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, the answer is no. Yeah, I always try to do better than I am. But there's a dangerous thing not to fall into is to try too hard to do well, which means you can. There are moments in offshore sailing where you shouldn't try to do everything to win. You should just make sure you don't lose. So that all comes back to risk taking. So the danger when you say, I want to win, and you're already a little bit behind and it might be too late, is to take huge risks and lose more than you actually gain. So I do. Yeah, of course, you always try to do to scrape a couple of places if you can, if you're not doing well.
Yeah.
But no, it's important to understand not to take ridiculous or stupid risks to try and do it.
And that's like in 2020, I got a sense in some of your strategy on the races, certainly on the first leg, you had a plan which was not to kind of take extreme risks. It was to stay with the leading pack, get away and you had your plan of action as well, but stay with the leading pack of boats, not take big risks. And that seemed to pay off. Is that something that you've learned from?
Absolutely. Because offshore, the thing with sailing is you're depending on the wind, so it's fairly simple. If all the boats are together, you've very little risk of the wind being different or something changing. But if you're completely off on your own, the other side of the fleet, there's a very good chance you're risking either winning a lot or losing a lot.
Yeah, so it's the leverage. You can actually either a risk can take out two outcomes: huge upside or huge downside.
Exactly. Yeah. So once you're doing badly, of course, it's always tempting to throw all your dice on the table and go off on your own. But which is something that you do. Something I really learned from was to try, and again, it comes back to this pile I was telling you about. One of the factors in this pile of priorities is your competitors. And a mistake that you can make when you're doing badly, or especially at the beginning, is to put competitors always at the top of the pile. So one thing I did is I put it at the bottom automatically, and then just really in the very, very precise moments, I would say, all right, okay, maybe I should start putting competitors up, or really at the end of the race, because otherwise you just sail around in circles following the others and doing stupid mistakes. So.
Interesting. Another question here from Roy McAllister. What gave you the motivation to do offshore sailing and keep looking for work?
I love it. I don't know. I love it. The whole moving around the face of the earth just with the wind is kind of cool. You know, the sensations. I know I just love the whole sailing part of it. I just love being. First of all, I started off just loving the whole sailing part of it, and then the technical part of it, the maneuvering of managing a whole boat on your own is kind of cool. And then the competitive side of it has kind of bitten me.
I get a sense, Tom, it's not the type of job you would do unless you loved it. You couldn't do this job where you were kind of just marking time.
No, not at all. You have to love it. You see people that see people that show up and try to do it because it looks cool, and then they quickly realize that it's not actually. I mean, you see loads of cool photos at the start and at the end, but you don't really see that much of when you're soaking wet and you haven't eaten and you can't sleep and you cut your hand open and things. A bit hard, but you know, you have to love it.
Actually, just on that point there, we have a very interesting video which I wouldn't mind showing, because it's difficult to imagine what Tom's office looks like. But Leah, if you might show that action video there, we'll just show this for everybody. It's about 30, 40 seconds. Can you just show that there, Leah? Okay, I think it's just that's an incredible piece of footage there. And you might have noticed, by the way, Tom wasn't on his own. He was racing with Damien Foxhall, another very famous Irish professional sailor. But there's two things in that boat that are kind of worth pointing out. One, it's a new generation boat with foils. And secondly, you can see Smurfit Kappa. Tom, you've had a long relationship with a couple of sponsors like Jabari and Smurfit Kappa. Because obviously that makes it possible to do what you do, but maybe just talk a little bit about that and how that came about.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. That's another very important part of it that I definitely is not my expertise, and thank God there's people like you to help me so much with it, and of course Cleona and the French Irish Chamber of Commerce who helped with the introduction at the start. And it's funny, I remember that I was talking about imposter syndrome. It was right at the start. Is very one thing I felt. You know, remember that day when we were going into Smurfit Kappa, and I said to you, "How do I look, Chair?" And you goes, "You look like a sailor going into the office." That was another thing. I was a sailor going into an office, and I remember at the same time thinking to myself, "Geez, what am I doing here? I did this. You know, this isn't. I shouldn't be here." And it's the same. Even thinking about it now, is that complete imposter syndrome where I shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been thinking that, and they believed in me back then, and then they have continued to believe in me. So thank God. So thanks very much to them all, and to you.
No, it was a very funny story in that meeting, because when you're making your first pitch, which was actually you did a brilliant job. I remember the guy Damien Devaney saying his response, who was Chief Marketing Officer of Smurfit Kappa, saying, "Gosh, this is really interesting." But he says, "I was only once in a boat and I got very seasick." So it was kind of, but anyway, it's interesting. And obviously you work very close with Smurfit Kappa around their Better Planet Package initiative. And I know you have a great passion about the ocean and things you see. And you've been quoted about what you saw when you sailed by ships of containers, bringing all the stuff to people that don't need as well. What do you have this kind of the oceans and what they do? And, you know, that's your workplace. I mean, you have strong views about the environment.
Yeah, you can't do what I do and not be affected by it. You know, unfortunately, the thing, you know, people always say, "Oh, do you see dolphins and stuff?" And you go, "Yeah, kind of." You get sick of seeing dolphins. I have the luxury of being sick of having enough. I've seen enough dolphins. it's, you know, you see sunsets, whales, you see all sorts of stuff. The thing you see the most of is plastic and rubbish and container ships. And
Yeah, gotcha.
so you can't not be affected by it. So yeah,
Good. Okay. The questions are flowing in. Here's a very interesting one as well from Michael Walsh of Dubarry. Who do you look for inspiration in the sailing world?
Ooh, good question. It kind of fluctuates. For a while, for a good while, it was Ellen MacArthur. Not because I don't know if any of you ever read her book, because she came up she kind of grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere as well, and ended up on the sailing thing. And then probably her, I suppose. And then I had a little phase with Eric Tabarly, who was a very famous French sailor at the start. But it kind of bounces around. So at the moment, as well, Damien Foxhall as well, I kind of looked up to a lot.
Okay. Question here from Joe Rooney. Do you ever stop thinking when solo sailing? That's an interesting question for you.
Ooh. Do you ever stop thinking? Yeah. It's important. I think it's something I tried to do a lot of this year, is to stop thinking, because otherwise your brain can go into 90. And as I said, just have a little list pile in your head of the important things to go through, and apart from that, just kind of, no, I don't. Yeah, but it's fairly easy because you're just doing what you love, you know, I suppose.
Okay. Question here: the best way to follow Tom's exploits on the web. What's the best source, Tom?
All the social networks, I suppose. If you go into Google Tom Dolan Racing, and then our website, we also have a website called Tom Dolan Racing, and then the online trackers. The first race is in 3 weeks, so there'll be an online tracker and things like that. So
yeah, and the online tracker, for people that are not familiar with it, during the race that Tom does, each boat has a tracker, a satellite tracker, so you can watch Tom what he's doing. It's kind of a digital form of cocaine in terms of addictiveness, because once you start playing with these trackers, you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, I wonder how he's doing at the moment. But they're a great way to do it. We might share Tom's program afterwards with people if they're interested as well. We have the schedule. He does about 5 races a year, starting in 3 weeks' time. Question here from Fabrice Folliov. Any ambition to do the Vendée Globe?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose again, as it was something that for a couple of years ago would have been a long off dream. I never would have imagined being able to do, but now it's kind of, especially the last one, because a lot of the skippers in the last one I would have sailed with or trained with or competed against or even beaten sometimes. So you kind of know it's the first time it's kind of looked doable, you know, if you know what I mean. The sailing part would be the easy part. Sailing around the world isn't easy, but of course, yeah, absolutely.
And Tom, it's no secret you've announced your qualification campaign for the 2024 Olympics in Paris, which is the same year as the Vendée Globe, which is a November start. So talk a little bit about the Olympic campaign. Obviously, this is a double-handed, not single-handed, so it's double-handed.
Again, I suppose in a lot of times in my life, I've kind of been in the right place at the right time, like a lot of us, I suppose. But this just happens that I think it was a year or two ago, they announced that there's going to be an offshore event in the Paris 2024 Olympics. So I just happened to be already competing in the biggest, the most difficult, the highest level that there is in short-handed offshore sailing. I already live in France, so I probably couldn't have planned it better. I suppose the aim was the Vendée Globe, but now this Olympic thing has kind of popped up, and it's the sort of thing you can't refuse, really. I suppose represent your country. You know?
And you have to have a co-skipper who must be Irish and female. Any word on that, or any progress on that?
Yeah, she's coming over in April, but I haven't asked her if we can announce it, so I'll leave it. I'll wait for now. But
okay, so there'll be an announcement shortly about your co-skipper, and I think watch this space. Well, here's a question from Hannah Linehan. From your experience based in France, what changes would you like to see in Irish sailing?
Ooh, tough question. To be honest, I've been here for 10 years, so I'm probably not very well placed to talk about Irish sailing. Especially I suppose I was never really in a yacht. I was never in a yacht club at home until the National welcomed me in this a couple of years ago. But I've never, apart from my whole sailing career, I suppose in Ireland was Loch Rammer and then Clonans. But I don't know. It's a tough one to call. It's just try to open it up, I suppose. I wonder try to. It's so silly. My boat is parked down in Lorient, which is also where some of the biggest boats in the world are, the trimarans. There's this huge 60-foot open things, and the pontoon is always open. There's no gates on the pontoon, you know. You just walk up, and people they walk up and walk around and look at the boats.
Yeah.
And when you go to a pontoon in Ireland, there's barriers with barbed wire and cameras and saying strict no trespass. And I wonder would that not maybe be a first step, is open up the pontoons, you know.
Yeah, okay, fair point. And before I wrap up, Tom, I always like to kind of ask for takeaways. Any kind of tips you want to just give people about tricks you use in kind of from sports psychology, which might be of help to people from in their business, their personal, their professional lives?
No, I don't know. Just as I said, make little lists, or try and anticipate when things are going to be difficult, and have a little list of things to do. As I said, the important things are breathing, drinking water, and eating. And then apart from that, just always remember that someone said to me that we think about giving up a long time before we actually do have to give up. So if you think about that, if you start thinking about giving up, it means you're a long way from having to give up. So.
Okay. Well, look, on that note, Tom, thank you for fascinating insight. I just think what you've done is remarkable. I think it's been great to get insight into what you do. I think I'm speaking on behalf of all the audience and the France-Irish Chamber of Commerce. We wish you every success in the future. We're looking forward to the announcement about your co-skipper shortly, and about your campaign, and the best of luck with the 2021 season, and from everyone in France-Ireland Chamber of Commerce. Back to Cliona.
So thank you so much, Jerry and Tom, and really great to hear you chatting together and talking about resilience, which I think a lot of us need right now. So it's a very timely event. It's one of a series of webinars we're doing through the France-Ireland Chamber of Commerce. And of course, we're delighted that Tom has been a member of the Chamber for so long, as well as Jerry. So if anybody who's listening today wants to know more about the France-Ireland Chamber of Commerce, do get in touch with us at info@franceireland.ie. And we'll be following up with some of the links we talked about, and also with a recording of this session to everybody who participated today. So again, thank you so much. That was great to hear you. And also we had great fun planning this event as well. So Jerry and Tom, thank you on behalf of the Chamber.
Thank you.
Au revoir et à bientôt, j'espère. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.